Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CCSN podcast. I am Chris here today with Chase. How are you doing?
Doing fabulous. How are you?
I'm doing great. We got a lot to talk about as always, and I'm as excited as always. Let's start it off with the MLB hot. Julio Rodriguez contract extension. Chase, what are your thoughts on this? You love him. Let me hear about it.
Absolute steal. Absolute steal. I get that it can go up to $400 million, which at that point maybe it's not a steal. But you've got this guy locked up for 14 years. That's what the steal is. Like, I really think that he's one of those players that any amount of money, you just give this guy a blank check. That's what I think Julio Rodriguez is to me, and that's the kind of guy that the Mariners are getting. And you see that in your franchise, you lock him up long term. That's what the Braves have been doing. They set the blueprint, and the Mariners, they followed it to a T.
Absolutely. And this is the crazy part about that I look at. You see that big number, as you just said, that 450 million, what it could be. Right now, until he is 33 years old, he is going to just be making $18 million a year, which is outright incredible. Aaron Judge right now, who, we all know how great he is, going into his contract year at 30 years old, he's going to be looking for close to $40 million a year. And we all know Julio Rodriguez definitely has that potential. And, we always see the salary cap building year in, year out. I mean, this could be the biggest steal, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the biggest part about the contract, in my opinion, is that it incentivizes him to keep performing. All the numbers go up the more he performs, the higher he finishes in MVP voting. So that's such a huge thing, because a lot of times when guys get these big contract with guaranteed money, they kind of they're set, There's no reason for them to keep going on that grind. And a lot of franchises just kind of forget about that. You're not trying to pay people for what they've done for you. You're trying to pay people for what they're going to do for you while they're on that contract. So I think the Mariners have just they just have a superstar now. There's no way to better build your future.
I agree with that. And to go along with that, from what I've read, Julio Rodriguez is all in for proving, I'm going to be this guy throughout my career. One quote that just stood out to me was, they're always showing their loyalty to me, Rodriguez said. They're always showing me their love. They're always showing me that they care about me. And I really appreciate that. As something that my dad told me from a young age, I should appreciate and be grateful to the people that helped me to get to where you are. And you're saying that about the Mariners. This 21-year-old is showing all of this already. And it's just awesome for the Mariners organization in general. Another thing, at his when he was signing it, in front of all the paparazzi and everybody, there was more than 20 team staff members there. His teammates, Ty France was there. There was tons of members of the Mariners organization there to cheer him on. And from a standpoint of a MLB player, you're looking at this and you're like, I'd love to go play in Seattle. I'd love to be part of that family of the team. So, I think that whole, our interaction did bigger things for the Mariners organization that they weren't even considering at the time.
They are absolutely one of the better run franchises in the league right now. And I know they've got this drought going on, but I think that they're going to start becoming a contender in the near future. Now they're starting to build a fully loaded pitching staff. Not even starting, it is completely fully loaded now. So they've got that. They've got a superstar on offense. They've got a bunch of young bats that are great and under team control for a while. Really like Ty France. And there's just so much to like with this team. And honestly, I know that you haven't gotten anything from him at the major league level yet, but Kelenic, I'm a huge Kelenic fan. I really think that there's a lot in his swing that you could figure out. And there's just so much to like the Mariners going forward.
Yeah, their pitching staff is already a top 3 pitching rotation. And a lot of the guys in that rotation are young and they haven't even hit their peak yet. So, this year, I could definitely see them making noise in the playoffs, but next year, realistically, I could see them being a top 5 team in baseball from the jump.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. There have been stretches this season where they've gone on those runs where they look like a top 5 team in baseball, and really it's been injuries that have held them back, kind of. J-Rod went down, Haniger went down,
Winkler.
Yeah.
A lot of big bats in that lineup, and that's what you need. You need consistency. But I'm really looking forward to – I'm really hoping they do make the playoffs this year, and I think they will. I think they'll sneak in. The 3 teams that I really want to see in there are the Rays, Mariners, and I do want to see the Orioles, but I think it's going to end up being the Blue Jays. Speaking of the Orioles, though, they're going for the sweep today against Houston, so that's obviously helping their odds. They struck out Trey Mancini to win the game yesterday, and I believe yesterday they had a shutout. I know one of the games was a shutout. I forget though, but ending the shutout on a strikeout against Trey Mancini in Houston. What a way to end it for them.
Bautista's incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible. The movement on his pitches is just like every time I see the pitching ninja post of Bautista, I'm just in awe, man. Like it's just beautiful. Absolutely one of the more fun closers to watch in the game.
And he has one of the best songs to walk out to.
Of course.
So you can, they're sitting 1.5 out right now, the wild card spot. If they beat Houston today, that could go down to one game. And I mean, we're not even September yet, so people are already kind of like locking in these 3 teams as their wild card teams. And frankly, I would not do that. I mean, September's the most important month in baseball, so let's see what happens there. I'm staying on the Orioles. I genuinely think this team is building a dynasty. I mean, if you look at their farm system, they are already stacked down there. I mean, they have Gunnar Henderson, who, in my opinion, is going to win Rookie of the Year next year. He's tearing it up in AAA right now. And I don't really think they might call him up for September call-ups, but they make the playoffs. I don't know if he'd be on the roster. I like Colton Cowser. I think he can be another safe bat in that lineup next year that can really help them, just get on base and keep the lines moving. But one thing that I really, really need to see from the Orioles to be a believer, they have to go out and get another starting pitcher or two, because that's the one thing that I think is holding them back. They don't have one starting pitcher this season with an ERA under 4.
They also lost John Means, which really hurt. He'll be coming back next season. That's big. They'll have him and G-Rod coming up, which will be a huge addition to a pretty weak staff right now.
And even with that, I mean, you have G-Rod coming up, and Means hasn't been extended yet, so you have all that money to throw at a starting pitcher right now. And I think putting Rodriguez in the 3rd spot in your rotation could just help him incredibly from putting him in the 2. I mean, that's a big difference.
I absolutely agree. I honestly think that you could probably get two pitchers with their payroll. They're the lowest payroll in the league, and they said they're looking to extend it. Baltimore is not. They've got the reputation over these last few years of being one of these bottom feeder teams like the A's that aren't willing to spend money. The Baltimore Orioles, they've got enough money to go out there and make a splash in free agency, especially right now in this free agent class.
Exactly. And what fans don't really realize, especially when you're a fan of that team, your team is not, when you suck and you're in a rebuilding mode, there is no need to go out there and spend money. That's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to get the better players in the draft. You're trying to just build your farm system before you go out there and make the big moves. And frankly, the Orioles are doing it incredibly right. So, I mean, I think this year, if they handle free agency right, they're a sleeper to win the East next year. And I know it's bold, but I can really see it.
Yeah, I mean, it's bold, but I like it. It's fair. I mean, any other division, you'd say that a team with this many young stars and having this much success this season would be in line to win the division next season. It's a bit of a tougher one, but I like the pick.
I just think they got that dog in them, as they say. I love Adley, and having a top catcher in the league really just helps your win total, in my opinion. Having every team that has a top catcher, I feel like they see some sort of success. So that's just the one thing that I really think will help them cross over that line. Anything else?
Just a quick note on Adley's swing. From the left side of the plate, it's probably the most beautiful swing in baseball. I mean, the home run he hit that it wasn't the one that hit the ceiling. It was the next one that went like 450 a few games later. I saw that swing on replay on MLB's Instagram, and it's just the most beautiful swing I've ever seen in my life. I just had to put that out there.
He is I think he's a future MVP, if I'm going to be honest with you. Let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. Who are you taking throughout their whole career? Julio Rodriguez or Adley Rutschman? If you have to build your team around them.
The catching position's more valuable, and I think they're fairly equal talent-wise, so I'm going Adley Rutschman. Yeah, I mean, it's very close, but I mean, he's got the defensive value that just you're not getting that from the outfield. You're just not.
I agree. I think Adley is going to win multiple MVPs. I think J-Rod has the potential to do so too, and I think he will. But I'd rather have the best offensive and defensive catcher in baseball than, you know, no slack on Julio Rodriguez, but there's a lot more great outfielders out there than there are great hitters or great catchers.
Yep.
One other thing, another team I really want to see do some moves this offseason to just bolster their overall win percentage, their roster, and it would give them a leader. I really like Dansby Swanson to the Royals this offseason. I think an infield of Bobby Witt at third, which absolutely needs to happen because Bobby Witt has statistically been one of the worst defensive shortstops in the league this year, and he's not gotten any better since the season's gone on. He has a great bat though, so that's the one thing. Swanson at shortstop would give you a great defensive shortstop, very good offensive shortstop, and a leader. And I think that's what the Royals are lacking right now in that infield. Lopez at second, Nicky Lopez, obviously just a good utility guy who can get the job done. And one of their top prospects who's up right now, Nick Prado at first base. And I just think that gives you a really well-rounded infield, and for a team really needs it. You know, they're at the bottom half of the league right now, and I don't see them contending next year, but it would definitely give them something to look forward to, and it would be really good for those young players to see a guy like Swanson out there.
Yeah, Melendez not being good defensively is what really hurts that team because you can't have him catch. So, and that's like when that's the prospect you're really hoping. So you're gonna have to move him, maybe a DH. But there's just, I do agree that would be a great move for the Royals. Yeah, it's just I don't know. I don't see their direction going forward if they were to just bring in Swanson and not do much else, because I don't like their pitching staff very much. And like you said, Bobby Witt's defense has been such a letdown this season. I was much higher on them before the season than I am right now, if I'm being completely honest.
I agree with that. I mean, I only like one pitcher, and their rotation is very young. I mean, they don't have one guy other than Greinke under 26 years old right now. And I think Grady Singer is going to be a breakout player next year. I think he could be a first-time All-Star. His K through 9 has gone up every single year he's been in the league, and it hurts when you only have one, solid pitcher in your rotation right now. The other pitchers are not good, if we're just being frank. I mean, Zach Greinke isn't the same Zach Greinke's been. He's 39 years old, so obviously he's not going to be the same. But he's not going to be in the rotation next year either, probably. So they have a lot to build on, but I just feel like a team like that, when you have all these young guys coming up, it would never hurt to add a guy like Swanson.
Oh, absolutely not. I just kind of personally, I want to see Swanson go to a team looking to make the playoffs, because that's where he's at his best.
Yeah, one team I really would like to see. I mean, I know we talk about this probably every episode, but he'd be a good running mate in San Francisco with Aaron Judge next year. So I could definitely see something like that. Speaking of another team, but the complete opposite, in my opinion, they have a great rotation or great pitchers to put in this rotation, but they don't know actually how to use it or use them or do anything with them, the Miami Marlins. I mean, we saw last night or 2 nights ago, Sandy Alcantara threw another complete game against the Dodgers, allowed 1 run, had over 10 strikeouts. The dude is simply amazing, and they're going to finish third in the division, and it's going to be just another cool season on the record books.
Yeah, I mean, they have the potential going forward next season to have a Alcantara, Sixto Sanchez, Edward Cabrera pitching rotation in a 3-game series. And that might be, bar none, the best stuff, just pure stuff out of a 3-man rotation I've ever seen, because just the velocity, the movement, and just everything with those 3 pitchers is incredible. But there's no bats. There's no real direction. Jesus Sanchez has not been what you want from him at all. That's just one player, but every single player on the roster really seems to be a disappointment. And once you get these good players, because we've seen this with the Marlins before, they just kind of let them go and try and rebuild again and rebuild again and rebuild again. So we're in this constant cycle of them rebuilding, and it just comes down to very, very poor management. I
agree. And I'm going to give you some names. They have Sandy Alcantara, Pablo Lopez, Edward Cabrera, Taylor Rogers, Luzardo, Sixto Sanchez, and Max Meyer. And those are 7 names that, and they could be in any MLB rotation. Yep. And I think once they have to go out in free agency this year and say, all right, we need an elite bat. We can't bring in a guy like Jorge Soler, who had a very good postseason run, overpay him again, and he's the same player. I mean, shout out to Soler for getting that contract, but I mean, that he can't be your best hitter in a lineup. That's just, I mean, they have Jazz, he's their best hitter in their lineup, but you need complementary players, and that they just don't have that right now. They've been banking on Brian Anderson breakout for the past 3 years, and that's not going to happen. They just let go of Aguilar, who was supposed to be their first baseman, give them that power. They're a mess, frankly, and they need to fix this up. I mean, they got one of the best defensive catchers in the league this offseason in Jacob Stallings. They just have to fix what you win with, and with is a powerful offense in this league right now, especially with how dominant pitchers have been recently.
They went cheap on their bats. They didn't go fully in on it. They want to go like a kind of a budget way, it felt, and it bit them. Like they had JT Realmuto. They just had to pay him. They just didn't. They let him go. They traded him. Like, not for much. I mean, Sixto is great, and I already talked about how I love his stuff, but like the value of a catcher compared to a value of a starting pitcher is not similar. So that's
I mean,
pretty much all I got to say to that.
the only trade that I mean, I know Yelich hasn't been like the Christian Yelich those 2 years he was, but I mean, I really think it has to do a lot with that injury that he got. I don't think he'll ever be the same player, sadly. I love Yelich, but the one trade that really just like made sense out of all of them was the Ozuna trade. They got Sandy Alcantara back from the Cardinals, so like that was the one trade that I guess you could say they won. I mean, but they traded Ozuna, they traded Stan, they traded Yelich, they traded D. Gordon, they traded all these JT Remuto, as you said. So I mean, they have to pick a path and they got to stick with it. I mean, they're Miami, for God's sakes. Like, who does not want to play in Miami? The tax is great. You're living in Miami. Figure it out.
Yeah, well, they have not been able to do that yet. It's pretty upsetting for Marlins fans, at least.
Sticking with Yelich, let's move to Milwaukee. The Brewers. They just called up Garrett Mitchell, who's their number 5 prospect, who's supposed to be their future center fielder. And frankly, I mean, I was looking at his stats yesterday, and I was not really that impressed with him. And I was looking at a lot of reactions from Brewers fans, and like they're loving him. They said, "Oh, this guy is going to be big for us." In 2022, he has played 68 games. He has 72 hits. He has 5 home runs, 34 RBIs. He's walked 30 times. He has 17 stolen bases, only got caught 1. So I think that's really good, actually. And he's batting .287. His on-base percentage is .377. So he's a good player, and that's at the minor leagues. You know, we have to see how this translates into the major leagues. And I just don't think this does a lot of things for them. I mean, yeah, maybe it gives you a good guy to bat leadoff or a good guy to bat ninth in your lineup, but frankly, Hunter Renfroe just can't be the best hitter in a championship lineup, in my opinion. I mean, they were banking on Yelich to be this MVP player for years to come after they extended him, but obviously that hasn't happened. He's barely broke 10 home runs so far this year, and Andrew McCutchen's been their second best. Oh, Willie Adames has been their second best player this year, and I really like him, actually. So he's actually one of the most underrated all-around shortstops in the league this year, but you can't. That's not how you win games. I mean, you can't have Hunter Renfroe and Willie Adames being your top 2 guys.
I think they're definitely in the market for a huge name this offseason because they need it. Because they are absolutely just like a perfectly built team to win a championship minus 1 star. You need that big bat in the lineup to bat third or bat cleanup, and that's what they wanted Yelich to be. He's just not that. So. And they've kind of tried that a couple of times with a couple of different people in their lineup. I mean, Renfroe's the guy they're trying right now, but like you said, he's not the guy that is good enough to be the 3 or the 4 on a championship team, not a contender. So, I mean, Garrett Mitchell, he's got an advanced approach at the plate. He's not bad. He walks a decent amount. That kind of stuff translates, but not right away. He's, 23? So,
yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit older than most prospects, but I don't think that I see it too much with him coming in and being a major impact right away on a team that's looking to make a push right now.
Yeah, I mean, they've been struggling a lot recently. They've just been falling back, it seems, every game in that wild card race. And my prediction this year is they're not going to make the playoffs. And this offseason, their GM's going to look in the mirror and say, I got to do something big. You know, as we've talked about on other episodes, he's going to make I have to save my ass type of move, which – you know, I'm all here for. I mean, they had the starting rotation. It seems like they have a decent enough bullpen. I mean, th- they made the good move of trading Hader from what he's been doing so far in San Diego. I mean, obviously he had his situation, but for team we're just talking about, Devin Williams looks like he can be an absolute stud as a closer. So as you said, they're a few pieces away from being what we all thought they could be. But let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too high on them going forward unless they make that huge move because they don't have the prospects in their system right now that are able to develop and be that big time bat. I like Luis Urias going forward. Like I think he can end up developing into a very good player, but what's the ceiling? It's not like that high all star level MVP caliber player.
Very good player. That's what I'm expecting from a guy like that. And it obviously helps, but you need your superstar in a lineup. One other point that I'd like to talk about the MLB today before we move on is Tyler Glasnow. I mean, he just signed a 1-year, $25 million extension from the Rays. I think that's a really good move by the Rays. They're showing, listen, we're willing to spend money now. Rays fans are probably like, thank God we finally did something over $5 million per year salary. But I really like that. I think Boz is coming back. Tyler Glasnow is coming back possibly this season. I'm really looking forward for what's his name? Their shortstop, Wander Franco, to come back. And I think if they can get all these guys back, not on the 80% at least. I mean, they can make some noise in the playoffs. The Rays know how to win, and these guys are proven players. I just really think they could be dangerous. They get healthy, but in the right time.
You need Franco's bat. You absolutely need it back now because he's your guy to, not even just his bat, his just ability to get on base, even steal a bag, get you into scoring position. He's so good just in general. He's just a great baseball player. And I mean, it's a team with great pitching. They're able to find pitching in whoever basically, but you need bats in your lineup. Well, as we were saying with Milwaukee, I don't know that Milwaukee and the Rays are that different pitching wise. I think they're probably fairly close in almost every statistic, probably around that 6th to 10th area of the league. So, I think they're fairly similar teams. They need a star, but I think the difference between them is they have Franco on the roster already. They have a couple of guys with the Rays that have the ability to develop into that guy, where I don't see that as much with the guys on the Brewers.
Brewers have probably one of my least favorite farm systems in the league. If I'm being
There's
honest
nobody that I like in that. I'm sorry, Brewers fans, but at least you have Giannis.
And you have Aaron Rodgers.
That's really all you need. You don't deserve a good baseball team if you have Giannis and Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, you guys had Prince Fielder and you had PED user Ryan Braun. You guys had your little stretch a couple of years ago. But moving on, I think it's time to talk about the NFL. As we did last week, we're going to be breaking down division by division, and we're going to be shifting to the NFC West this week. Chase, I want you to go first. Give me your West standing prediction.
I think that, first of all, I want to start off with just a kind of a hot take that the Rams aren't going to be the first team in the division. I know that we've talked about that a little bit on here before, but I think it goes Niners. They finish well above everybody else. I think they finish around 12-5, 13-4, that range. Then I see the Rams finishing around probably closer to 500, maybe around 9-8. I could see them at the high end winning 10 games, but this is a weaker team this season. But I see the Niners finishing, then I see the Cardinals finishing in third, and then the Seahawks. Actually, yeah. I think the Seahawks and the Cardinals are probably going to be battling it out for that 3rd and 4th spot, and probably finish with about the same record at 5-12.
I like that. I mean, I will give you your credit. I have been doing my research on the Rams, and I absolutely agree. I mean, we talked about this. They're very top heavy, but they're very top heavy. And my record prediction, I have the 49ers. I have the 49ers winning the division, but I don't think they're going to be as dominant as you have them. I have them going 10-7. I have the Rams going 9-8. I have the Cardinals going 7-10, and then I have the Seahawks going 5-12. When I look at the Rams, they lost so many impact players, and that's the thing. When a lot of NFL fans look at teams, they just automatically jump to their superstars or their stars. And, in the NFL, you can't do that. It's a huge roster. There's so many moving parts of a team. And yes, they have Aaron Donald. Yes, they have Cooper Kupp. Yes, they have Matthew Stafford, but they lost a ton of guys this offseason. I mean, they lost their cornerback too. They lost they lost one of their starting defensive tackles. I mean, they lost three starting members of their offensive line. It would take a miracle for them to finish where they did last year.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I mean, they went all in last year. This is what we were expecting. This is where they're going to start falling off. This is what they kind of like expected. And I think Sean McVay is a good enough coach to get you. I will get onto this later, but he's my number one coach in the NFL. But I think he's a good enough coach to win you a couple games and maybe sneak you into the playoffs. But there's a lot of holes on that roster right now. They don't have anybody coming off the edge that I like. And Aaron Donald can only take up so much of the field. So if you lose Donald, then what do you have? I mean, you have Jalen Ramsey on the outside, who's maybe the one cornerback on that roster who can defend an NFL wide receiver.
They have Troy Brown as their second.
I know. And then you got pretty much Taylor Rapp at safety, and he's all right. I mean, he's nothing special. Their linebackers are awful, absolutely awful. Bobby Wagner is not good at football anymore. I'm sorry. He just, if the ball gets past Bobby Wagner, it's gone. He is out of the play. And he can't get to the sideline fast either. I mean, watch the tape. The guy, go try and see Bobby Wagner track somebody down on the sideline in 2022. It didn't happen. Any of his tackles were just right up the middle. So I still think that there's enough there with the Kupp connection and the Stafford connection and just Sean McVay's genius as a head coach to maybe sneak them out with 10 wins and sneak into the playoffs. But do I see them, they won 10 or 11 games last year? I don't see them being any better than they were last year. So that's kind of where I feel on the Rams. But I feel like I'm going to get a lot more hate on the Cardinals prediction because I say they're going to finish around the same as the Seahawks. But honestly, I feel like that's pretty fair. At their wide receiver right now, until DeAndre Hopkins comes back, they have Andy Isabella as their second wide receiver, Marquise Brown as he's listed in their slot at the moment. But I don't like their wide receiver room. AJ Green, he's not that anymore. Their offensive line, Josh Jones, Danny Isidora, Sean Harlow, Will Hernandez, and Joshua Miles. I know two of the names on that list. I feel like I'm pretty in tune with the NFL. Three of the names on that list were not even on my radar before checking that out before. And I mean, I'm looking at tight end. You've got some decent players at tight end with McBride and Ertz, so that's not too bad. But outside of that, that's just their offense. The interior of their defense, Rashard Lawrence, he's not good. Leki Fotu is starting. He's not good. J.J. Watt will play maybe 2 games, but he'll get hurt after that. So you can't really rely on that. Michael Dogbe is starting for them. Dennis Gardeck on the outside at linebacker. Ezekiel Turner and Tanner Vallejo are starting at middle linebacker. You got Zaven Collins, who's a boss pretty much. And then at corner, it's Byron Murphy and just a bunch of nobodies. Literally a bunch of nobodies. And then Deontay Thompson and Budda Baker at safety. That's probably the worst roster outside of quarterback in the NFL, in my opinion.
I think that the Cardinals are going to be horrible too. I mean, last year they had the 5th best pass rush in all football, and then they lost Chandler Jones. They just let him walk. And I think that I think their front seven is actually going to be bottom 5 this year in all the NFL. And I think that their secondary isn't terrible, but as bad as that front seven is, it's going to make them look a lot worse too. And I think it's just going to be complete shit for the Cardinals the whole season. They can't, and the big thing, I mean, as you said, JJ Watt probably is going to look great for the 2 to 3 games that he plays. He's going to get hurt. With the Cardinals, you can't trust your big names to stay on the field. And that's huge. I mean, you need your big names to stay on the field. You're paying these guys a lot of money. They're taking up a lot of your salary cap. I mean, D-Hop got suspended 7 games for steroid use, and that's horrible. I mean, Kyler Murray, we all know who that is. We all know who he is. And frankly, I know they just signed these contract extensions, but I could really see a world where Cliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals depart ways after this season.
Yeah, I mean, I just went through all this reading the roster, and the truth is, I just don't like the way that their front office and their whole coaching staff is built. They can put whoever they want on the field, and that's what they've done the past few years, and they still aren't going to be anything. I'm going as low as 5 wins because they're that bad of a roster. But fundamentally, with their coach, who Cliff Kingsbury, I do not think is a good coach. He's never been a good coach. The fact that he still has a job and just got an extension is mind blowing. I think that he's a joke. I think that Keim is a joke, their general manager. And honestly, I feel like Kyler Murray as an NFL quarterback at this point in his career, getting paid $50 million is a joke.
I agree. I mean, one thing with Kyler Murray that I was doing a little research on, his play style really like isn't that sustainable. I mean, every single year he's been in the league, the first couple of weeks he looks like an MVP candidate. He looks great, then he falls off, and it's been every single year. And this year, I mean, I think he's coming in with his worst roster, maybe other than the first year, but I see the same thing happening, and I think he's gonna have his worst season yet after signing this big extension. I think Arizona is going to be a shit show this year, frankly.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people thinking they're going to finish close to 500, but I don't see that. Honestly, I think they're going to be a dumpster fire team this year. And I know, like, they just extended Kyler, and they just extended everybody, but you win no games. You don't have any salary cap. There's no way to improve. How do you improve? You just kind of got to blow it up. I could see that coming very, very soon, honestly.
It should happen very soon if they have any hope of winning anything anytime soon. Getting that first Super Bowl ring. Moving on to the 49ers. Frankly, the only thing that I think is keeping this team from, doing what you said of winning those 11 to 12 games, I just think Trey Lance is going to struggle a little bit out of the gate, but he's in a perfect situation with Kyle Shanahan, which just makes his job a whole lot easier. I mean, he has the best weapons in the league, in my opinion. He has Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, Elijah Mitchell. And I think they're all going to have great years, and they're just going to make Lance his job a whole lot easier. I think he's going to be able to grow smoothly at his own pace. And I mean, that interior O-line's a little shaky to start the season. I mean, they lost 2 starters last season. But again, I think Shanahan makes that line just look a lot better. There's going to be quick passes, all of that. Top rushing again. He does what he does.
Trey Lance is winning MVP this year.
You think Trey Lance is winning MVP?
That might be because he's my fantasy quarterback. But honestly,
you saw his haircut?
Yeah, well, Trey Young just led the league in points and assists. I don't care. And you see Trey Young, he looks like a lollipop stuck to a mattress or to a carpet. But my point with Trey Lance winning MVP is there's actually been one quarterback that we've seen coming into a more perfect situation. And it was Patrick Mahomes, or a similar situation with an offensive-minded head coach. That's not just an offensive-minded head coach, but they're one of the best offensive-minded head coaches in the league. We'll get to it in a minute, but Kyle Shanahan, he's my number 2 coach in the league. Literally, I think so highly of Kyle Shanahan. He was the mastermind behind that Falcons offense that blew the 28-3 lead, but that Falcons offense was incredible. Like, he turned Matt Ryan into an MVP. So you've got that. You've got really an incredible offensive line with the best offensive lineman in the league in Trent Williams at left tackle, which is so important. You've got George Kittle, who's going to be a great blocking tight end and a great weapon for Trey Lance. Like, he's going to be such a safety blanket for Lance. And then you also have Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk on the outside. And when I'm looking at the Niners this year, this is kind of a year where they don't have a running back that I really trust. I mean, I know they sift through these guys, but I think a little bit more this year, now that they have their quarterback, they don't have to use Jimmy G as kind of like handicap Jimmy G. You can just really unload that offense. I think Kyle Shanahan will go a little bit more pass heavy, just a tad bit this season, and maybe give some of the rushing attempts now to Trey Lance instead, kind of like what Josh Allen does. And I think he's kind of like a quirked up Jalen Hurts, He's like, if Jalen Hurts had a really strong arm, then that's what he would be. And that's why he went number 3 overall. Like, this is pretty much, in my opinion, almost identical to the Patrick Mahomes situation. And I was very high on Trey Lance coming into the draft. So how can I not be high on him now? Like, what quarterback comes into a situation like this?
I mean, I will give it to you. And I mean, he's coming into a great situation, but his first 2 games of the season are against the Bears and the Seahawks. So, I mean, he has that going for him too.
Well, but like, even then, he's in such an easy division too. Like, I understand that there's the Rams that are there, and they have like this historically good defense, and they're always tough for young quarterbacks. Well, you play them twice, and I think they're going to be a lot easier this season. And the Seahawks, they have the worst secondary in the league, probably borderline. And then you've got the Cardinals, who are second. So like those are two easy teams that you get to see twice a year that you're going to just unload on, who have some like historical success. So it'll look a little bit better. Like you see him putting up 42 points against the Bears, you'll be like, it's the Bears. You see it against the Seahawks, you're like, oh, that's a Pete Carroll team. That's a team that's won Super Bowls under this current regime. He just put up 42 points. Maybe they have a bad secondary, but it just looks a little bit better. So I think that'll help his candidacy.
All right. I like that. I mean, I think one thing I'll say about the 49ers, I think this is Brandon Ayuk's year. I really think he's going to be a top guy. I mean, he was a top guy in the offense last year, but he kind of struggled out the gate. But I really like, I mean, from everything that, he's my guy in fantasy too this year. But
literally one pick, I was going to take him with the next pick.
But, you stole Tyler Bass from me though, so I don't feel bad.
Well, I stole your pick. I'm glad.
Yeah, but going back to, I just really think I mean, everything that's come out about him in camp, he looks brilliant. And the one thing that the coaches are saying, that his confidence level is just off the charts this year. So, I mean, I think that's something that's really big, and that just helps in the long run. And I just think with the 49ers, he's going to struggle a little bit out the gate. They're going to rely a little bit on the running game, but as the season progresses, he's going to find his rhythm. But I just want to say, I do like Trey Lance. I'm not hating on him.
Yeah, I feel like it's a bit of a bold pick to say MVP, but I'll stick by it.
Sometimes you got to make those bold picks. Moving on to the Seahawks. This is a team where, I mean, I have them going 5-12, but I like some of the pieces. I mean, I like some of the pieces in their offense. I like what they're building, if I'm going to be honest with you. I like some of their draft picks that they had this year, and I think that they made some really good moves on that offensive line. I really like Charles Cross. I like what I saw in the preseason. I mean, he lined up great against Robert Quinn. Abraham Lucas has looked really good in preseason so far, and he's already won that job, apparently, according to Pete Carroll. He allowed one pressure and 63 pass rush snaps in the first two games against the Cowboys. So I think that's a great steal for them. And that's one thing we all know that the Seahawks have been struggling with over the past couple of years, even with Russell Wilson sustaining a good offensive line. So, I mean, if they can build this for their future quarterback that I think they're going to draft next year, I mean, in CJ Stroud, I think, because I think that's just a perfect fit for them. I don't know. I feel like they're just moving in the right direction. And a lot of people have them as like this huge dumpster fire, where I just don't really see that. I mean, I don't think they're going to be good this year, but that's going to help them more in the long run.
They've got a lot of pieces in place. I like, for this season, I like Rashad Penny, but going forward, I like Kenneth Walker. He's not going to get a lot of touches this season, honestly. He's hurt right now, and like they drafted him and said that they have Rashad Penny. They just re-signed him on a one-year deal. You kind of want to let Kenneth Walker learn how to play in the NFL so that when he's really ready to go, he can go full steam ahead, not have any tread on the tires. Almost like, I know they're not similar players at all, but what the Titans did with Derrick Henry. He kind of sat for a year and learned, which is kind of funny to say, but it worked. So I do like some of the pieces that they're putting together. I like Kenneth Walker. I like Lucas. I like Charles Cross. I mean, Jamal Adams, he's not a coverage player, but he's got a very good role, and he's still fairly young. He's like 26. You're not going to just let him go. You got DK Metcalf, who's incredible. You're probably going to get some assets back for Tyler Lockett, because I don't see him being on the team long term. Noah Fant's a great player. You've got the picks that you got from Russ. Like, there's a lot to like in Seattle. They're really a quarterback, a secondary, and a defensive line away, which is a fair amount, but they've got a lot of assets.
And I really like Ford on their defensive line. I mean, he's only 26. I think him and Shelby Harris are going to be not, anything spectacular this year, but I think they can be decent as a pass rush. Yeah. So, I mean, like, I loved that trade for the Seahawks with sending Russell Wilson to the Broncos. And here's one of my upsets. I have them beating the Broncos when they come home. I really see that happening, and I kind of want it to happen, to be honest.
Rashad Penny will be going for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in that game.
And you mean DK Metcalf. But anyway.
We're gonna have to do an episode where we just give our fantasy teams and do like a fantasy episode, go through that, because like
I like both of our teams too. So I mean,
they're great. I mean, we'll probably do that when we see each other in the championship, but that's a different story.
we'll see that we'll see that in January. We'll do that special in January. Well, that's our other prediction. In our 10-man league, we're gonna be the
Yeah, you'll be
championship
hearing
this year.
for us when we get our money back.
Yeah, exactly. But one thing one more little note on the Seahawks this year. I don't think their QB situation is people are making a lot of it, and I don't really get it. I mean, I think Geno Smith is a fine bridge QB, if I'm being honest. I mean, in the games he played last year, he looked absolutely serviceable. And people are like, oh, I've seen people literally say the Seahawks are not going to win a game this year, and it's all because of QB play. And it just makes no sense to me. I think the Seahawks hate, the Pete Carroll hate. It's all just like too much. If they just ran the ball, it'd be completely different.
Exactly. I feel
You'd
like
have
people
two
forget
rings.
that. Well, I think people forget that Geno Smith is a fairly decent quarterback. Like, he's not terrible. But he
Good game manager too.
Yeah, he started 7 games or something last year to the exact same quarterback rating as Russell Wilson. Like, he had a 103.8, which is exactly what Russell Wilson turned in. So the offense didn't get any worse with him last season between Wilson and him. And in the offseason, I feel like their offense got better. So, yeah, I think there will be a drop-off in passing production in the offense. Like, they won't be able to support 2 wide receivers like they have in the past, for fantasy at least. But I think that overall, they're going to be a fairly decent offense. And I think the secondary is what's going to kill them.
Oh, their secondary, I think, is going to be the worst in the league, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
I mean, the only
Reed,
bright spots is Diggs and, like, I guess, as you could say, is Adams, but he plays a different role than most safeties.
He's more of a linebacker than he's a safety.
Yes, I mean, it's terrible, that secondary, for just being honest with each other.
Yeah.
And everyone else. But moving on, I think it's time for our top 10 head coaches in the league. Chase, do the honors. You go first.
All right, I'm going to start it off with number 1, Sean McVay. Then I got Kyle Shanahan at number 2, Bill Belichick at number 3, Mike Tomlin at number 4, Mike Vrabel at number 5. Then I got Sean McDermott at 6, Matt LaFleur at 7, Pete Carroll at 8, John Harbaugh 9, and Andy Reid 10.
All right, my list. I have Sean McVay number 1. I have Bill Belichick number 2. I have Mike Tomlin number 3. I have Kyle Shanahan number 4. I have Andy Reid at 5. Sean McDermott at 6. Matt LaFleur at 7. John Harbaugh at 8. Mike Vrabel at 9. And I have Nick Sirianni coming in at number 10.
Yeah, Nick Sirianni was my bubble guy. He was. I had him on there at 10. But had to put Andy Reid back on the list, and I think I ended up moving him up to 9. Yeah. Honestly, I think Andy Reid's a little bit overrated. He's got his ring and everything, but Andy Reid, his legacy to me, and he's probably a Hall of Fame coach, he is. But right now, I don't put him. I have him at 10. I don't put him in the top 9. As my coaches, because his legacy is just choking the big games, it feels like. And he's always had the most loaded rosters in football. Going back to the Eagles roster, he had dream team after dream team with the Eagles and did not win anything. He choked the Super Bowl. And so there's that. He's done it. He did it again in the Super Bowl last year. I know that wasn't all his fault, obviously, or the year before. But, I mean, it just feels like when the games are the brightest, Andy Reid is always favored and he never comes out on top. So like it detracts from him for me.
I get that point a lot. And the only thing is when I think of just like head coaches, and I understand like obviously the main goal is to get to the Super Bowl, but I just feel like Reid is especially now with Mahomes, like I just think that connection is so great. I think even with, losing Tyreek Hill, they're still going to have a top 5 offense this year. And I think that's big considering, you're losing considerably, top 2 wide receiver in the league right now. And I think Reid's offense is going to be top 5, as I just said. And first year, Patrick Mahomes, his rookie year, not his rookie, his sophomore year. That game against the Patriots, I just really think if they got to the Super Bowl that year, we'd be saying a lot of different things. Because I do agree with you. He has the record of choking at the big games, and that's not what you want. But I get the point. I get the point with Andy Reid.
Yeah, I'm just going through his history right now, and there are not only are there just a few losing seasons in here with good teams. I mean, He got forced out of Philadelphia in 2012 after going 4-12 with a team that he built, that he constructed. So like I can't not hold that against him still. I mean, this was something that really happened. He not only did he take a team that was completely built for him, the McNabb team, and lose in the NFC or in the Super Bowl, I should say, and in the playoffs almost every season after he went 11-5, lost in the playoffs, 11-5, lost in the playoffs, 12-4, lost in the playoffs, 12-4, lost in the Super Bowl, 13-3, lost in the playoffs. Like that was his stretch with a completely loaded team. They made the trade for Terrell Owens. Then he goes back again. He built a new team in 2012. He gets fired after that. Then he goes to Kansas City. He has a couple good years in Kansas City, above average, with a fairly above average team. And Alex Smith, I feel like he gets a lot of discredit, but he was good. And he had some very good years in Kansas City. And then Patrick Mahomes comes along. He wins his championship, and now he gets pushed into these upper echelon of coaches. But honestly, I feel like that's more just Patrick Mahomes being great, like just incredible. And Andy Reid is really benefiting from it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think maybe I'm being a little too harsh at 10. I think he's probably a better coach than John Harbaugh at the end of the day, but I think there's a lot to take away from it.
I think both of those quarterbacks, I mean, as we said, I think they're both in the top 10, but I just think that, as you said with Andy Reid, I think both of their one ring kind of like overrates them a little bit, if I'm just being completely honest.
Yeah. Harbaugh's another guy, just like he was almost forced out of Baltimore before Lamar Jackson came
and he
around.
got Lamar. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I give him a lot of credit for what he did last season and what he's done with this iteration of the team, like how he's built this team. And he does a lot of the personnel moves too. So he's been very vocal in the best player available in the draft and all that stuff. So John Harbaugh is a very good coach, which is kind of the top 10 coaches are very difficult to pick, honestly, because there are a lot of like the 10 best coaches are they just operate differently. So at any given year, whoever wins is going to be highest. I mean, it's no coincidence that Sean McVay is number one on both of our lists after winning a Super Bowl. Like, it's just kind of like a recency thing, but his system is the one that's working the best right now. Who knows? Maybe the NFL starts to move back and change a little bit into a defensive game, and then Bill Belichick is suddenly all-time great again. And even he's still top 3 for me, but he's not. There are guys that do the current game a little bit better than he does.
One thing that I'll give Reid and Harbaugh is I feel like they've aged with the game well. So that's like one reason. That's one aspect of respect that I really do give them. I mean, they're both older coaches and both have had great offenses, led great offenses in the recent, as you said, like the new generation of the NFL.
Yeah,
so I just really think. Go ahead.
That's just what makes this conversation so difficult is how much of it is evaluating their body of work in the past and how it's worked like before, and how much of it is like seeing how it's going to work in the future. Because certain systems, they work one year and then they don't work the next year. We see it all the time. Like the same thing could happen with the Bills. It's like you could just figure them out. Like it's not something that's never happened before. We saw it with Andy Reid's literally this season. We saw it with the Chiefs when they went from being 14-2 the year before to a measly 12-5 this year because people started just running too high. Every game against them, it was too high. Now the whole league is a too high league. So now you've got to adapt and play to that. So that's what makes this conversation so difficult, but so fun, seeing how people like value different parts of it.
The funny thing is, as you just said, like everyone's playing the different defense now because of the Chiefs. And I think the Chiefs are going to play a completely different type of offense this offseason.
Yep.
After losing Hill, which
they're completely changing, that's why it was hard for me to judge Andy Reid for this upcoming season, because that's kind of how I did it. Like the coaches for the upcoming season, does Reid just throw the ball? Are they just this explosive offense again, or does Reid go back to almost like a West Coast kind of offense where they're getting the ball out quick and into the middle of the field, and like Mahomes is more reading than he is just chucking the ball deep and relying on his talent. So
I think that's going to be a big year for Patrick Mahomes if they do switch to that type of offense. I mean, can he change his ways, or does he just has to throw a bomb to Tyreek Hill or this pace Sky Moore this year? So I mean, I really do think they're going to change more, as you said, to a West Coast type of offense this year. They got the players. You have Juju, you got Travis Kelce, who might be the best type of player for that type of offense. So, I mean, look out for them, in all honesty. I really think that offense is going to do things that the defenses are going to come in and say, this is not what they've been doing in recent years. Like, they just decided to change, and Andy Reid's going to be like, oh, yeah, we did, and we're doing great at it.
Yeah, it's funny because I sat on this podcast not even a week ago, and I said, do not draft a tight end in the top few rounds in fantasy. But Travis Kelce, I made a personal exception for that one. He is going to just get so many targets. I went with him in the second round, which is where I think it's completely fair to go for a guy like this because of he's going to get all of the target share, basically, that's getting left open from Hill. I mean, some of it's going to go to Juju, sure, but like when you're thinking about the Chiefs in the middle of the field, it's always Travis Kelce. And if that's going to be their offense now, I think that just opens it up so much more for him. And you have to have Kelce is going to be playing a huge role in that offense, and he's not a blocker. So where is it going to come? It's going to come where it always comes. It's going to be the yards, the touchdowns, and all the extra stuff that he brings. The yards after catch. Just he's an incredible receiving threat, and I think he's going to have a monster season this year.
I mean, he's the best tight end in the league, no doubt. I'm not expecting any regression from him at all.
You see, I actually disagree with that. I think it's probably Kittle, just because of what he adds with
He's
blocking.
the best blocking tight end, I'd say that. I mean, best receiver tight end, I'd say Travis Kelce. But I guess if you're saying like all around, including blocking, I guess you can give it to Kittle. But I'd still rather have Travis Kelce on my team.
I get that. That he's like a wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean, and like George Kittle also just fits so perfectly in that 49ers offense. And you know what's funny, actually? I mean, we've all been seeing these Mike Gesicki trade rumors. And as we talked about last episode with Miami, this offense is going to be a replica, I feel like, of Kyle Shanahan's. And I think Gesicki's going to be off the roster because, frankly, he's one of the worst pass blocking and run blocking tight ends in the league. And that does not fit what they need.
Yeah, that's a huge problem. Especially because like who's behind it? Drew Smythe? Is that their backup tight end? It's gonna be they are gonna go for a copy of Miami's or of San Fran's offense, but they don't have the personnel to pull it off. I'm telling like we saw the Shanahan offense go 4-12 before. Like we have seen Shanahan lose a lot of games running this offense because he doesn't have the personnel. And I think that a lot of people are just saying, well, yeah, you look at that coaching tree and there's like this screenshot and there's all these names. And then the fifth one under that was Mike McDaniels. I feel like Stephen Ross just kind of went and looked at that screenshot and saw that there was a fifth name on the board after McVay, Shanahan, LaFleur, and whoever. I can't remember who the last one was. Damn. But after those four names, there was just McDaniels. I feel like they just kind of went and were like, well, yeah, it's worked for everybody else. We're going to do it. You need the personnel to make that work. And Mike McDaniels is not, in my opinion, on the level of those guys from what I've seen, not as a coach. Like, I get it's a meme, but there is a certain part, like there's a value to carrying yourself like a head coach. And Mike McDaniels does not do that. You can only get away with that if you're incredibly good and you win a lot of games. And that's now the bar that they're setting for the Dolphins. And I think there's no way that they live up to their expectations this year, especially because Tua is so like controversial that everybody's watching.
I mean, that deep pass I saw a couple of games ago from Tua to Tyreek Hill, that was not any other quarterback, but like say Patrick Mahomes, that's a touchdown. Underthrew that pass. Tyreek Hill obviously caught it still, but there's definitely some things that they got to work on. But the one thing I would like to point about Mike McDaniels is, as you did say, like you have to earn that kind of. And I think if he has, a 9 or 10 win season, he's going to have a lot more say of, who they draft next year or who they, even though they don't have their first round pick. But
it seems that he already has that. They already gave it. Like
yes, but not like
he told them to go all in on Tyreek Hill, and they just went all in on Tyreek Hill. They just did it. Like you just got
that's
him.
That's a good fit for them, though.
Maybe. I mean, it's the best deep threat wide receiver in the league with a quarterback that can't throw a ball over 30 yards. And like you go on to Dolphins Twitter, and they all talk about like, well, Joe Burrow underthrew Jamar Chase on deep balls last year, and he caught them, and nobody said a word. And it's like you see that with every little thing that Tua does. Anytime there's just so much evidence that he's not an NFL level quarterback, that he's not capable of running an NFL elite offense. Maybe, just maybe, he's a Jimmy Garoppolo level guy, but that's not what you want from a quarterback. That's not what you're looking for from a young quarterback that you want to maybe extend.
you want to get rid of a guy like that. And I mean, they want to give him every chance in the world, but I hate the Cardinals, but they did one thing right in their franchise, and it was move on from Josh Rosen as soon as it was obvious that he was not good. And I feel like a lot of teams, like the Dolphins, could learn from that.
I mean, I think one thing, I mean, we mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but the Lamar Jackson extension, that's one thing that Miami's keeping an eye on, I feel like. Because if they don't come to terms, I mean, that is one team that I could see literally being like, here's everything. Like, here's everything. And just give us to him. Give him to us. And you know what? I'd love to see that happen, to be honest. And we're getting to that point now. I mean, we're 2 weeks away from the NFL season, and there's really been no chatter about it, which we also said, you know, like usually keep it on the D-low, but I don't know. There's just, I don't really, do you think he's going to sign this extension before the season starts?
No.
Because, like, I don't think he is. I don't think Lamar Jackson, as much as he says, you know, on social media or on Twitter, you know, I want to stay here. I don't know. I feel like he's a guy.
Well, it's the same thing as like Aaron Judge going to these charity events and telling all these little kids with cancer that he wants to stay in New York. Yeah, of course you do. And now everybody loves you. All the fans are like, oh, he told all these little kids, like, oh my God, he's the captain. He's the captain. No, he just wants money. That's a marketing move, and that's something that for whatever reason, no, it's absolutely a genius business move. But for whatever reason, it just gets lost in a lot of NFL and mostly sports fans' minds. They just don't see the business aspect of it.
Sports fans have to realize that, like, loyalty, like, is not really a thing anymore.
Unless you're the Mariners, apparently.
Yeah, well, the Mariners are one of the best franchises in the MLB. It franchises in sports, to be honest, right now. I think, you know, I mean, like,
loyalty is a thing in sports with the good run franchises. The Golden State Warriors, they're loyal to their players. Like, I mean, I was just going to say, I think there's a tier.
There's a tier. And I mean, like, that it's a little different in the NFL, though. Because, like, I don't know. Like, I mean, like, I guess, could you really name an NFL team that's like them? Because the way the NFL works is, like, especially with, like, a position that's not quarterback, like, yeah, you can have a 2-3 year good prime, but, like, then if you suck, like, you're getting cut. Like, it does not matter. Like, if you're a fan
the Steelers are one that are kind of like that. The Steelers.
Yeah, I guess.
And they're the only team with the Rooney's that are like held in that regard. And I feel like you said, it's a tier. It's like the S tier. It's very small. There's not
very elite club.
Yeah, and I think it's like the Warriors and the Steelers, and I guess are we throwing the Mariners in that club?
I'm throwing the Mariners in there right now, to be honest. They're doing it right.
Very well run franchises, and what it comes down to is good business practices. And I mean, that's just something it's funny because a lot of times that's the opposite of how they get into these positions to buy the teams. But good business practices is what keeps these teams successful, because you're working with people. You're not working with assets. You're not working with like I don't know what the word would be. I guess drawing a blank right now. But you're not working with like a toy or whatever. You're not selling something. You have people that you're working with. So
you're not playing a video game.
Exactly.
And I mean, I'm just going to put this out there. I feel like the Warriors are, like, honestly on their complete own level. If we're talking about, like, team loyalty, if I'm going to be like, every player who goes there, literally, I feel like wants to stay. Other than if your name's Kevin Durant.
Well, they win rings. That's why.
They win rings, but I mean, like, hey, they're doing it right. I mean, I feel like I could have seen Klay Thompson leave a couple of years ago. But
Klay Thompson absolutely could have got a $35 million a year contract from somebody. I feel like the Hornets would have given Klay Thompson every dollar in their account.
And I mean, I'm not a Klay hater. I love Klay Thompson. He's one of my favorite players. But
he would suck as a number one.
The Warriors should look to move on from him this offseason. I think they're going to have to trade one of them. Who would you rather? This is how I look at it.
You can't. Like,
you can, but if you're talking about, I understand that.
We're talking about all this. Hold on. We're talking about Wiggins or
Klay. Wiggins or Klay.
Come on. Like, no, like as a player and as a talent, I'm going Wiggins 1,000 times. But I think Klay is going to be or cost less to bring back, because you're going to have to extend one of them. Klay's his deal's up after, I think, this year or next year. So he's on that 42 right now, but then I think he'll probably take a pay cut after that. And Wiggins, he's great, but he's going to want another big contract after this. Like, he's going to want a borderline max contract, and there's going to be somebody that's going to give it to him and it's not going to be the Warriors because, like, who are you paying at the end of the day? The guy that's won 3 rings for you, or the guy that won the one, and he was good, but he was a complimentary player on that team. Like, you've got to pay Clay. He's just a legend.
He was great though in that finals.
Oh, Andrew Wiggins! I am one of the biggest Andrew Wiggins supporters in the world. I will literally die for Andrew Wiggins at this point. But Klay Thompson is just, if Steph Curry is the face of the Warriors, Klay Thompson's like the nose or something, because like
The nose.
well, yeah, he makes, he's just part of it. He is an essential part of it. Imagine like a face without a nose, man. It wouldn't look right.
He's making 40.
And-
See, this is the thing.
Hold
I
on.
feel like there's
He's a body part. He's a body part, and Andrew Wiggins is just a piece of clothing, right? It's nice and it looks good and it's cool, but you can get new clothes, man.
I'd say like, if we're talking about last season, I give Andrew Wiggins like a foot. Like I'd say like he's a foot. But
Wow.
Anyway,
You can live without a foot, man.
Klay Thompson. This is the one thing though, with a team like the Warriors, if we're talking about like, Klay Thompson's going to make $44 million next season, and he's in line to make $44 million. Or no, he's in line to make $40 million this season, and in the upcoming year, $43 million. And I think with a team like the Warriors, maybe they could find a way to structure it like, Klay, we're giving you all this money now. We want to bring you back, but obviously we're not going to give you this much money at 34 years old. Some way to keep Wiggins. Like, I don't know, but like, I just feel like Wiggins on this team, he brings that burst of defensive energy. He's like younger than all these guys. And I mean, personally, I think Andrew Wiggins, this might be a little bit of a stretch, but I think him being there and playing this defense even helps Steph Curry's defense come along. And I was watching ESPN earlier, and they were saying Steph Curry is one of the worst defensive point guards in the league. And I don't know how they didn't, like, I was like, did you watch the playoffs last year? Did you watch the finals last year? Like, this
Steph
guy
Curry,
stuck his defender.
He has not been bad as a defender of the better part of a decade now. He has been,
Yeah.
He does what Allen Iverson did as a defender. He just plays the lanes, and he creates turnovers, he causes havoc, and he just plays hard. That's all you really need. Playing hard as a defender is 90% of the battle. Like, he does not have the physical tools to be a good defender, which is why these outside people looking in might say that he's not a good defender, because sure, maybe if you turn on 2K, he starts getting bodied. Yeah, he's not a good defender because he's 6'2". But in reality, Steph Curry, in real life, plays hard every play, and he's smart. He's so smart. He moves off the ball better than anybody else. So he knows how people are moving off the ball. He knows how to play those lanes, how to get in front of these guys going around the screens. I don't think I've ever seen, except for the one time where DeAndre Jordan absolutely murdered him, I don't think I've ever seen Steph Curry get hit by a screen, which, I mean, that it's funny because that one play is like a highlight that I've seen a million times, is DeAndre Jordan just murdering Steph Curry with his screen. But other than that, he's so good at avoiding them, which is just these tiny details that the Warriors and Steph Curry especially do so right. And that's part of the reason that I don't think you can get rid of Klay. Klay is he's part of that culture that built that, where everybody does the little things. If you look at every single person on that team, they all play their role so well. They do every single thing that's asked of them, and they don't care if they don't do anything more than that. Like, Andre Iguodala has been an all-star in the NBA, but he can sit on the bench and just talk to people and coach them and be totally fine with it. That's one person, and he's another guy that's like a key. Like, I don't even need to describe how great Andre Iguodala has been for the Warriors. But Kevon Looney is the perfect example. He's genuinely not a terrible guy with his back to the basket. And if he were a selfish player, that's probably what he would have tried to develop himself into being. But instead, he developed himself into being a rebounder, because the Warriors, they just know how to get the best out of people. So I don't think you can get rid of Klay, because he's part of the foundation that built that.
So you're letting Poole walk? Or
Yes.
who are you letting walk?
I'm letting Poole walk. Poole, honestly, I'm not as high on Poole as most people are. I love the shot creation, the tough shot creation, but like I don't
He's a
see
small bag.
Yeah, it's really
It's a few
just
moves.
It's nothing too elite, and we already saw the jump from Jordan Poole. Like, that was the jump from Jordan Poole, from being a terrible player to being a good scorer. But I don't think he's going to end up being like an all-star. I don't think we saw takes in the playoffs where he was the next Steph Curry. There's a reason he wasn't out there on the floor in a lot of these games. And if his shot's not falling, if the tough shots aren't falling, he literally looks like one of the worst players in the league.
All right, to close this whole Warriors debate, Klay Thompson debate, I'm going to give you the Warriors situation. I'm going to ask you what you do. Klay Thompson's 35 years old at the end of this contract. What do you give him, and what do you think he should take? Like what do you think? Like, as you said, like, he's part of this team, but like, is there a point where you draw the line?
I think that the Draymond Green contract, I think the Draymond Green contract sets the foundation for that. Whatever, because you're gonna have to pay Draymond, and we're already in this situation right now. So whatever he gets paid is probably about what Klay gets paid. And I think that Draymond ended up taking like a short. It depends if Klay wants long-term security. I don't know what he's gonna want, when he's gonna play. I honestly, if I were to just guess, in my gut feeling, I think that Klay's going to be a guy that retires a little bit early. If he's done it, you said 35 at the end of this contract, I don't think he plays another year.
He's very, I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, well, that's about it. I just think he retires right there.
Yeah, and I mean, the whole point, I mean, as I said, I love Klay Thompson, but like, after coming back from these injuries, he hasn't looked as sharp, especially on the defensive part of the floor. I mean, like, that's what you want from him. I mean, his shot was still really good, but like, I don't know. I just feel like there's a point where you have to come with, all right, we're still trying to win. And as you said earlier, we're not paying for what you did. We're paying for what you're going to do. So, I mean, if he was to stay at 35 years old, I could realistically see like a 1 or 2 year contract extension. And I could see like exactly 25 million a year.
That's
and
what
like
I see with Draymond.
And like, that would be the icing on the cake. You know, that's how you end the Warriors. Cause like, if I'm being honest, I do not want to see Klay Thompson or Draymond, and Steph Curry's a Warrior for life, but I do not want to see those two ever touch another jersey. Even back a couple of years ago when there were those like Klay Thompson rumors, it was still giving me the shivers. I didn't want to see that. He's a splash bro.
Exactly.
Splash bro. But this is another good point. I mean, I just thought of this when you were talking about it. I didn't want to interrupt your point, but that's why I really think Donovan Mitchell is overrated, because he's an undersized guard, but as you said with Steph Curry, he plays hard. He knows how to play hard. He plays defense hard. He's smart with it. Donovan Mitchell does not do any of that. And I mean, yeah, I know it's the Utah Jazz. It's a lot different than the Warriors, but you're going from the Jazz, who are a decent franchise, to the Knicks. Like, could you see that defense improving anyway? Maybe if Tom Thibodeau makes him play 45 minutes a game and play hard defense, but like, I don't know. I just don't see that at all. Like, I just don't see like the value in that.
We have not seen the drive.
And if I'm gonna give a little hot take right here, we're talking about Jordan Poole earlier. I think Donovan Mitchell, if he's anything, is a level up over Jordan Poole, a level, maybe a level and a half.
Yeah, we've already seen Donovan Mitchell play at an all-star level, so I think that's kind of his floor. He's an all-star. He's an all-star scorer.
That's it, though.
Like,
that's what I'm
saying. Like I said, he doesn't have the drive on defense, or really just as a player in general. But I think that kind of you see that change with some kind of players. Normally, when they go to the Miami Heat is when that changes, or like the Toronto Raptors or a team like that is when people start to get that drive. It's not when they go to the Knicks. So I think that what you said is correct. Yeah, or Tom Thibodeau. God, I hate that guy. Sorry, Tom Thibodeau supporters, or if there's any of you out there, but he's not a good coach. But like, I don't know. He's like an 89, you know?
Yeah. He
can score the ball very well, but he's not in that upper echelon of players.
Yeah, like, not to compare to 2K, but as we said, like, the difference between 89 and 90 is very different. Like, touching the 90 club is like, those are your elite guys, I think, or like on the verge of elite. And I just remember a couple of years ago, there were the Donovan Mitchell is going to be a better player long-term over Luka Doncic takes on Twitter. So those were always just remind me. And that, I remember seeing that the first time and I was like, all right, Mitchell's on my list now. Like, and like that,
the D-Wade comparisons were what did it for me. There's no D-Wade in his game. I'm sorry.
He's no flash. As Shaq said, he doesn't have it. And
did Shaq really say he doesn't have it?
Oh, you don't remember that? There was a big interview.
No.
It was live. He said it right on TNT after the game. He had the headset on and he was like, man, like, I don't think you have it.
What? I don't remember that.
Yeah, and it was like Mitchell was like, all right, like done deal, I'm gonna prove it, and like everyone was
You know,
like,
actually,
oh,
I
he's gonna go
remember
crazy.
I remember Shaq saying that to somebody, but I got was it Mitchell? I guess. I
It was
mean,
Mitchell, yeah,
that's
and it was
funny.
just, and I feel like if there was any moment to like, I mean, as you said, like if he get traded to the Heat or like the Raptors, that's a different story. But like, if there's any moment to like, flip your switch and have the cool highlight tape, it's right then. And like,
Right?
I just feel like it's gotten worse. If I'm being honest with Mitchell.
Yeah. You got anything else for today?
No, that's all.
All right.
Well,
Well,
thank you guys so much. This is CCSN podcast. Thanks for joining us. I'm Chris here with Chase. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at CCSN Sports, at CCSN_sports on Instagram. Thank you guys so much. See you next week.